Thanks. Thank you for coming. Wow. Imagine for a second that you had a slightly easier job of driving a taxi. So in a taxi, when you turn the wheel to the right, the taxi goes to the right. And when you turn the wheel to the left, the taxi goes to the left. Pretty much 100% of the time. Now, imagine that the designers of CSS had designed a user interface for a taxi. So now you turn the wheel to the right, and sometimes it goes to the right, and sometimes the radio goes on. And if you turn to the right on the way out of the airport, the trunk opens. And one day you're turning the wheel to the right, and the whole taxi literally disappears without a trace. Poof, you're just sitting on your butt in the road, wondering where the taxi went. Now you don't know why this happened. Maybe it's because your passenger was wearing a shirt with stripes, and you don't know, and you will never figure it out. The taxi disappeared, and the passenger disappeared, so there's no way to debug it. And this actually is what life is like every day for developers. And that's why programming is so hard. If you follow developers around and watch what they do all day long, this is what you see them doing. The first thing that you would notice is that 5%, it's the official number, I just made it up, 5% of their time is spent typing code into computers. The other 95% is spent, well, in meetings, but also trying to figure out why the perfectly straightforward code that you just typed is not doing the perfectly obvious thing that you expected it would do. Programmers are very, very literal. They have to have everything explained to them down to the smallest detail, and then they do exactly what you told them to do, especially when it's not what you wanted them to do. The way I sort of explain this to non-programmers is to use the Siri example. You say, "Hey Siri, is it raining?" "No, Dave, it's sunny today." Okay, so now you wear a t-shirt and you go outside and it's pouring and it's cold and you get wet. Why did this happen? I don't know. Maybe you turned off location services and Siri didn't know where you were and just assumed you're probably in Cupertino, California, or something very logical like that. You still don't know why. You say, "Siri, why didn't you tell me it's raining?" And Siri says, "I don't know what that means, Dave," even though your name isn't Dave. So you say, first of all, stop calling me Dave. And second of all, why did you tell me it wasn't raining? Why did you say it was raining? Why didn't you say it was raining? And then Siri didn't even reply because you didn't start the sentence with, "Hey Siri." And all this is hilarious. But if you're a developer, you are used to having this kind of crazy conversation with mentally challenged trash cans all day long. So how do we deal with this besides just going crazy? I actually know some companies that have hired psychiatrists for the developers. The way you deal with this is that you ask people for help. You could ask your coworkers, or you could ask the whole internet, and the whole internet doesn't smell bad. So that's where we get these online discussion forums, and we've had sort of several generations of ways to get answers to your programming questions. You know, the first big generation was Usenet, and the second big generation was Experts Exchange, and now we're in the Stack Overflow generation. You ask your question, you say, "Hey, I came out of the airport, I turned right, the trunk opened, what's going on?" Hopefully somebody knows why, and they answer your question. These various internet discussion forums, of which there have been many, filled up with a bunch of answers. Even before you have a chance to ask them, you would just search, what is that thing called? Google. You would search Google, and you would find somebody 2 years ago asking the same question. "Hey, I came out of the airport, I turned right, the trunk opened." And you would already find the answer without even having to ask it. And so these online forums were really magical. Developers all over the world had gotten together spontaneously on the internet, helping each other out, sharing their knowledge, answering each other's difficult questions. Everybody wins. For a long time, the biggest of these online forums was called Experts Exchange. And in the middle of the original .com crash, the company that owned Experts Exchange ran out of money. They had thousands and thousands of programmers all over the world voluntarily answering questions on the site, and they couldn't figure out how to make money out of this. So they almost closed down, and at the last minute, new owners appeared. They bought the company, and they solved the how do we pay for this problem by putting up a paywall. And the paywall said, hey, we have your answer. Somebody has already figured out how to keep the trunk from popping open on the trips when you get out of the airport. But if you want to actually read the answer, you have to become a member for the low, low price of just $29 per month, US currency or equivalent, payable in advance, MasterCard and Visa welcome. I don't really have slides, but I'm going to keep this up there because it's important. This pissed off developers. This made developers very angry. We developers were offended by being asked to pay to read our own answers that we ourselves had written. And then they added insult to injury, and they told us that if we did enough work answering questions for them for free, we could get a month of access. Thanks a lot, guys. So, 2008, Jeff Atwood, who you know of as Coding Horror, and I got together, and we decided to put Experts Exchange out of business. And that is why we made Stack Overflow. Now, by that time, I'd been writing my blog, Joel on Software, since 1999. So it had been about 8 years that I'd been writing it. And developers, back in 1999, outside of a few companies in Silicon Valley, developers were treated like assembly line workers. They were treated like typists. Like this is what you do is you type. There's a business super genius with an MBA, and they hire developers, and the developers type. They called them programmers then. It was perceived as something that monkeys could do. They treated us like monkeys. Not quite as nice. We didn't get bananas. We did get these dirty cubicles with the fabric walls, and that was what our offices were. And the funny thing is that the cubicles had been designed to be like the perfect place for moving paper around, which you didn't have to do anymore thanks to developers. But we still got the crap. We got the crappy computers. We got the slow computers with the 12-inch CRT monitors. We were ignored whenever somebody needed to be promoted. And now there's this obnoxious website, Experts Exchange. So every time we had a problem and we went there, we were told that we had to pay to read our own answers, which we ourselves had put on the internet in order to help our developers. So I don't really think that developers are just typists. Think about the. I think what they're doing is something a lot more important, and the way I describe it is it's writing the script for the future. Here's what I mean. Think about a typical day. One day I woke up, I'm wearing a little jawbone wristband, and it's monitoring my sleep somehow. I don't know how. And it decides that I'm sleeping just about as lightly as I'm ever going to sleep within a half-hour window, and so it decides to wake me up by vibrating. So even before I woke up, there's already millions of lines of code somewhere that are running on my behalf, and that's software. And when I wake up, probably most of you do the same thing, pull out my phone and start checking email. And again, I'm running about 4 different apps to check Twitter and email and all those things. And again, that's all software. That's even before I've gotten out of bed. I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth. Now, I don't think that my toothbrush has a computer in it yet, but this is only a matter of time. When that happens, you'll be able to download Flappy Birds or whatever onto your toothbrush. I leave the house, I go to the gym. On the way to the gym, I'm listening to podcasts. The podcasts were all downloaded onto my phone overnight by software, which is running on my behalf. It was all put there using software running on my behalf. Millions of lines of code. When I get to the gym, I check in. There's a little app on my phone. Boop. I scan the barcode. It keeps track of it. I've only been awake now for 15 minutes, and already I've probably used 38 different computer programs, and thousands of programmers' work has all conspired to make this possible. Now, that is a huge change for humanity. I'm sure there are people here that take this for granted, but when I was a child, I could pretty much go from one birthday to the next without ever using software. Like, I'm pretty sure that there was a computer that printed my report card once a year, but other than that, you could go for years and years before you use software. And now you can't even make it, through the first 15 minutes of the day. You can't even make it to breakfast without millions of lines of software. And think about where that software came from. It came from developers, and the developers probably had a spec, and the spec was probably 4 pages long, and it said, make an app to check into the gym. But those four pages of spec might have gotten translated into 3,600 lines of code, of very, very detailed code. What is a line of code? A line of code is a bunch of decisions that you have to make in order to write the line of code. How many decisions are there? I don't know. Let's say that you have a function, and it takes 4 arguments. That's 5 decisions. Which function should I call, and what are the values of the 4 arguments? So each of those decisions, they're very, very, very tiny, but they add up. And so at some point, somebody has now made 18,000 decisions that correspond to 4 pages of the spec. And the 4-page spec might have answered 26 of those questions, but the rest of them came from the developer. And so all those things, the developer sitting there making those decisions is essentially, at this point in humanity, deciding what will happen in the future, how the future will work. They're deciding how I'll wake up, what time I'll wake up, what I'll listen to, whether I can play Flappy Birds on my toothbrush, how I'll check into the gym, what podcasts I'll listen to, in what order. They were literally programming the future. They were writing what you would call, if it was a movie or a TV show, you would say this is a script. It's a detailed list of exactly what will happen. That's what developers do all day long. And these MBAs, the people that wrote the scripts or that hired the programmers 10 years ago and thought that they were so smart, they're still waking up every morning and they're sitting on their high-tech Japanese toilet seat, which probably has 8 different CPU chips in it, and they're checking their smartphone and they're making reservations on the Starbucks app so that their double latte is waiting for them. And then they're going to run the Uber app, and they're going to ask Uber to, I know you don't have it here. They'll say, I'd like to be picked up in 3 minutes, please. And then Uber says, you know, I don't really want you on this side of the street. If you could cross to that side of the street, it would be so much more convenient. Like the app will actually tell you that. And then the MBA will actually cross the street because some software told them to, because some programmer wrote some code that said the MBA now crosses the street. And this is nothing. Forget about, this is just a person that actually has some control over their life. But imagine the poor person working in the Amazon factory. And the poor person working in the Amazon factory has a little arm band with a computer on it that tells them, literally, go get a number 4 box and go walk this way and follow this path and take this book off of this shelf and take that razor blade off of that shelf, put them in the box, seal up the box, put the sticker from printer 27 on the box and throw it in truck number 15. Excuse me. And this poor guy is just an output device, like a printer. Like some programmer literally had LPT1 and then the guy with walking around the warehouse doing things for me as their output devices. It's really the program that is running everything. So developers are literally writing the script for the future. They're literally saying, here's what's going to happen. And the decisions that the developers make are very, very important. It's not just whether you cross the street or not. It's not just that the Amazon warehouse program actually knows the height of each worker and does not assign short workers to pick up things off of the top shelves, which is humane, but it's also important. All those little decisions, think about those decisions now as they affect your personal lives. So think about something like Facebook. And I think everybody can think of a story on Facebook of an emotional reaction they had to something that they saw in the news feed. So, mine is that I asked a friend to come hang out with me, and he said, no, I'm really busy, I'm working too hard, I just don't have time. And then I saw that he went to a Britney Spears concert with another friend of mine and was not actually working, and that made me sad. And then I realized that he doesn't actually like me, which is, for the next 6 months, I was sad about that. And the reason I was seeing that picture of him at the Britney Spears concert is that there's an algorithm in the Facebook code which decides what goes in the feed, and the algorithm was written by a programmer, by a developer, and it decides what goes in your news feed. And it doesn't really know that much about what's going on. It just knows, oh, here's a picture of 2 people you like. You'll really like this picture of them if I can put them together on the same picture. And honestly, it's kind of an autistic algorithm, and it just sort of decides, oh, I'm going to show you a picture of this thing. But to even say that the algorithm decides is absurd, because it's just a lot of matrix multiplication, right? It's machine learning. There's just it does about 1 million matrix multiplications, and it essentially says, I'm going to show you this picture right now, even though it's going to make you sad for the next 6 months. I kind of thought it had a 3% chance of making you happy. What do I know? So compared to just like Uber telling you to cross the street, or the Amazon guy that's just walking around everywhere based on what his wrist computer tells him. Facebook gets really, really personal. They're human beings on there, and everything in your feed is going to have, because it's people and it's your friends and it's your family, it's going to have an emotional impact. There was this study. The funny thing is that this was controversial. There was a study in 2013 that Facebook did where they took 689,000 Facebook users and they manipulated their feeds a little bit to give them either more happy stories or more sad stories. And lo and behold, they discovered that when you give people more happy stories, they're happier. And when you give them more sad stories, they're sad. And okay, so it was not a very useful scientific study. I think we probably could have guessed that. But the thing is that this caused this big controversy, and everybody said, oh my God, Facebook is manipulating us. And like, what do you think they're doing the rest of the time? Like, how do you think they're deciding what to put in your feed? Unless they were literally showing you every single thing, which they're not. There is a manipulation going on, and they just have to decide. And the best they could maybe do is maybe somebody at Facebook might say, oh, well, we should try to make the world a better place, which is maximum utility, whatever. By some calculation, let's make everybody happy with a Facebook feed. And that's even worse. Right? Because imagine just the philosophical implications of if Facebook was trying to keep you happy and not tell you about sad things that turn out to be very important. So somewhere there is a programmer that is making these kinds of decisions. And it might be something simple. Like there might be somebody at Uber, I'm sure there is somebody at Uber right now that is working on a way to actually get me a car that is going downtown instead of a car that is going uptown so I don't have to cross the street. And then I can, my life will be just that much better. And this will take, 900,000 tiny little lines of code, but they'll do it. And somewhere, there's somebody at Facebook, and I don't blame Facebook, because I believe that the people that are doing it are well-meaning. And somebody is trying to decide things like, can I show you a picture of your best friend if it's with somebody that you used to be a friend with, but you're not friends with anymore? Or somebody that you used to go out with, or your ex, or somebody that you used to be married to, or somebody that is dead, somebody that died. What should we do with those pictures? And these decisions are really, really important ethical decisions. And when you think about the kind of philosophers that you would want to make these decisions for the script, for us, for the future, then you start to realize just how important developers are. And that's why I care about developers. I think they're not interchangeable. If you want to hire a developer, to say, oh, I want a full-stack web developer, that's sort of ridiculous. You're actually casting a movie here. You're casting a movie for the future. And the developers are like the actors and the screenwriters. Those are the most important roles. And you have to find the right developer, and then you have to woo them, and you have to treat them like a celebrity. And that's why we used to say rock star developers, and it's not cool to say that anymore. But you want developers that are not just competent in the writing of the code, but who you actually trust with the philosophical, ethical, moral decisions about writing and creating the future. So I've told two little stories here. Number one, there was the story of Experts Exchange, where they essentially stole our work from us and tried to sell it back to us. And at the same time, the business world was trying to figure out why developers were not really interchangeable, and realizing that this business of just shipping out work to the third world and just saying, hey, write 30,000 lines of code for me based on my spec was not working so well. And that's where Stack Overflow came from. That's really what Stack Overflow bridges these two problems and solves these two problems. How does it work? It's pretty simple. Surprisingly, a lot of people who use Stack Overflow every day don't really get the whole picture, which is that somebody asks a question, somebody writes an answer, you get upvotes on those answers. These answers are good, and these answers are medium, and these answers are actually bad. And then those upvotes translate into reputation for that developer who wrote that first question. And that fuels Stack Overflow Careers, which is the business of getting better jobs for those developers, to identify, listen, these are the developers that are trusted by their companions, by other developers, and by their peers. And so those are the first ones you should think of hiring. And that's really kind of the grand plan, is for us to get great jobs for the developers that help out, and that's how we make money as well. And so instead of making money by essentially stealing the work of developers and then selling it back to themselves, which didn't work so well, by the way. Once they started charging money, they stopped getting answers, and Experts Exchange went down the toilet. But instead of doing that, we're charging companies that need to hire developers, or cast developers, as I like to say. And we give them kind of access to our community, and it benefits everybody. It benefits everybody. So we elegantly solve both of those problems at the same time. You write good answers, your colleagues upvote them, you get reputation, better job, boom. Now, to conclude, we're all going to have to live in the future, hopefully. I hope that we all live in a lot of future, and for many, many years. And this business about how our life is just infused with software and we run many, many lines of software before it's even breakfast is just the beginning. We are maybe 10% along the path of how infused our lives are going to be with software. If you're the person in the Amazon warehouse, 100% of your working day is being driven by lines of code. For the rest of us, it's just starting. And if you want your life to be happy and fulfilling and successful and non-frustrating, then you should care about who the developers are that write that software. And that's why it really matters. And Stack Overflow is the site where those developers are learning things, sharing their knowledge, and then leveling up, improving their careers so they can fix the code, fix the algorithms, and fix the future. Thank you very much.